But for me, I know how important it is and how amazing it is for you to have gone through 18 months together. So I want to take a moment to give each and every one of you, for you to raise your hands and give yourselves a big clap of going through this and coming together again through ICP cohort 15. So give yourselves a hand. I also want to take this moment and say thank you so much for sharing your space with me, because it's moments like this that I was sharing with Joe and Sue. When I walked in, I felt overwhelming emotions, because when I was here as cohort 11, there were so many things. I'm watching each and every one of you, and it's bringing back moments and emotions of how I was connecting with my cohort, how I still connect with my cohort, and the power that ICP, the connections that you make today and in this space and when you leave, bring to you and the work that you will be doing as leaders. So I want to again thank you for sharing your space with me. All right, so when Joe called and said, invited me and said, Patricia, we'd love to have you as cohort 11, and we'd love to have you share a reflection about how you strive to use your ICP experience in your leadership style. I went, oh, okay, I can do that. And I said, I can do that, but I want to do it, but keep my colleagues engaged. And so I'm going to have to share with you my reflection and use what I call my glass. How do I keep my glass full while hydrating? Because as we started, it's been 18 months and it's a lot of information. You've done so much here, and when you go back to campus, your institutions, there's a lot of expectations that fall on your shoulder. And I know that as you start this journey, there are 3 different aspects of this journey. And some of you are coming into this journey, and even in my cohort, there were people who came into this journey with the glass, well, I'm new to AJCU and not quite sure what I'm in for. So my glass is kind of, there's something there, I've got an idea, but not quite sure. But I'm open. Then part of the learning comes with, is my glass half full or is my glass half empty? And I gotta figure all this out because there's a whole lot of things happening and I'm not quite sure. And then there's and I fell into this, and I'll tell you why I fell into this, is you come and your glass is almost full to the rim, where if there's any additional information added, you're gonna feel like it's overflowing. And it's like you're trying to catch it, and what do I do with it? And you're running and holding it and wanting to share, but you don't know what to do with it. So for me, when I think of this journey and how I have utilized ICP, how I continue to share with those on my campus, cohorts, past, present, and future, what I have learned, it's glass partially coming in, glass, is it half full or is it half empty, or is it full to the brim? In my role at Boston College, as Joe mentioned, and I'm sure that there are many of you who hold similar positions where you're holding 3 titles, doing 3 different jobs, and there's expectations when you're going here, there, and everywhere, and sometimes it's difficult to take a breath. So I have learned through ICP as to how to slow down. The idea of discernment is to slow down and really think about what is the mission, what is my purpose, and how am I going to support my institution? And as I'm doing that, what do I need to continue to replenish myself and replenish my institution? And in striving for that, I've recognized that, and as I started, it's about who I'm connecting with. And at Boston College, from my own experience, one of the things that was so valuable to me is through ICP is my supervisor, the VP of HR, has gone through ICP. So when I go in and I meet with him, I'm having conversations about what I learned through ICP, what I continue to engage with ICP, because I am watching, I am connecting, and I am continuously sharing information, knowledge. So I constantly sit and we have conversations. Then the provost at our institution is an ICP cohort. And so there's opportunities to, when there's a conversation or if there's a crisis that's happening on campus, or students coming and saying, we need you, Dr. Lowe, to get XYZ done, and we need it now. And it's picking up the phone and having a conversation with the provost, with the VP of HR, to talk about, we're not gonna move quickly, we need to really take a moment to discern about what is it that we're doing, what is the opportunities, what are the strengths, the challenges and opportunities, how do we move forward and move forward to the mission of the institution. And then one of the most powerful things that I've discovered at my institution is that to do this work and to strive in terms of putting different aspects, to putting things together at Boston College, is that, especially in the work, is I've found that there are over 40 different member cohorts, from cohort 1 to now cohort 16. We don't have anyone in cohort 15. We had a down year for cohort 15, so we weren't able to send there anyone, but there are about almost 40 people who have gone through the ICP. And one of the things, and I know that Kevin O'Brien this morning talked about connection, talked about in terms of the mission of the institution is to really find what are leaders doing, and then how are we connecting that back to move the mission forward. And so it's finding those individuals across my campus and sharing information. And I have discovered that many of us started in all these different spaces, and as we typically call the role of a chief diversity officer, is that there's an expectation that we're always having the answer, but we don't always have the answer. And what we discover is that we're finding connections, that not knowing is not a weakness, it's actually a strength. And the strength is finding those who can answer the question for us, and how, in answering the question, our glass moves from feeling overwhelmed to starting to fill it a little. So that's my concept of really understanding the striving, because it is about, it's not just in this moment, in this journey, it's a lifelong journey. And you are going to, many of you, it's a lot of information, as I mentioned, and how are you going to unpack it? And that's gonna be so important for you. As I started looking slowly at your capstones, and to make those capstones come to fruition, and then to sustain them. Because it's going to take each of you over time at your respective institutions, as well as reaching out to each other at your different institutions and asking the question, gee, we're working on this particular project. Have you done something like this? Well, no, but I know someone else who has. Like, I think this morning I was talking to someone that was talking about a project in athletics and I said, gee, I know that at my institution, there's someone working on a very similar project and they've been doing it for a while. Why don't you reach out and connect? So for me, it's how do I strive through ICP is really slowing down and practicing the skills of finding who has information, who doesn't have information, as well as how do I continue to build my knowledge, my connections with past, present, and future ICP colleagues. But with that, I also want to say that I recognize that stepping in to this space is also stepping in as a leader with my 3 strengths. Has anybody ever done Strength Finder? Yes. So does everybody know what their 3 strengths are as leaders? Yes. No? If you haven't done it, I would suggest that taking Strength Finder or DISC to really understand what are your strengths as a leader. I know for me, my 3 top strengths are learner, achiever, connector is very close to achiever, and then the third one is relator. And I stepped into ICP knowing what my strengths were, and then I was like, yeah, my glass is all the way up there because I'm a learner. I was taking this information in every day and packing it in. I'm on notebook number 2, and I'm a note taker, so I'm writing everything down. So as a learner, I'm pulling it in, drawing it in, asking people questions, information, and then at the end of it, I was like, whoa, now I gotta take all of this, and I'm bringing it back to my institution going, what do I do with this as a leader? I know that I need to do something, but I need to ask myself, I had to pause for a moment and ask myself, is my institution ready? Because I pulled in a lot of information in terms of striving and wanting to do more, but I forgot to ask myself the question, is my institution ready? So that was a learning opportunity for me. And as a relator and a connector, I was constantly sitting in these spaces connecting and relating what I'm learning to the work that I'm doing, to members of campus community partners, and then wondering to myself, okay, how am I gonna make sure that I connect this and bring it back and make sure that it ties into the mission and what I wanted to do, what I want to do. And then I also had to say, okay, pause. Is this truly connecting to the mission, or do you want to connect it to the mission? Back to, is your institution ready? Thirdly, as a achiever, one of the things I wanted to do is loving all this information, finish my capstone, running back, I want to get it done. I want to get it done tomorrow. And then realizing, pause, because the capstone is wonderful, but again, do I have all my pieces in place? I thought I did, but I needed additional work. And as I started from the beginning, and what did I talk about is connections. One of the connections I found out was that there was a colleague of mine on campus who was also interested in doing something similar. And my capstone was about developing an initiative that supported faculty of color, particularly in a space where faculty of color are constantly having to be called out to connect with students of color, to be present, to do talks and so forth. But then when we talk about being on the tenure track, there's never time for them to do their research, their writing. So there was intentionality on my part to say, okay, how do I create space on my campus so that our mission, which is formation for faculty, staff, and students, could come to fruition for faculty of color, particularly women faculty. And so there was another colleague from a cohort, 2 cohorts before me, who was interested in doing something similar. And it was purely by connecting. We had an event on our campus, we have an annual event on our campus, and this is again something, a lesson that I had learned in terms of striving for ICP, is holding space on your campus where your ICP cohorts can come together and connect and stay connected. And it was through that experience that I then found out that she had a capstone similar to mine, and she was closer to the provost than I was. And she knew how to write grants, and I wasn't very good at writing the grants the way she wrote grants. And so we combined our efforts, and lo and behold, we got immediate money from our provost to push the capstone together to create space in the summer for our faculty, our women faculty of color, to go and find space together to work on their research, to share information with each other. And I also discovered that there are other AJCU institutions doing something very similar. So it's like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And all this came from asking the question through what I learned through ICP was pausing and asking myself, is my institution ready? Do I have enough information in terms of my knowledge, the knowledge that the institution has? Is the glass half full, or are we still talking about a half empty glass? Or is the cup runneth over, where we've got so much information but we don't really know what to do with it? And so through all of this, it's like even with the cup fully to fill to the brim, it's again recognizing to sustain and to hydrate is to find colleagues, and you just do the simple thing of slow sips. You don't have to, but slow sips. And when that happens, it creates space for more, and for more connections, for more opportunities to develop that learning. And again, even coming today and sharing space with you, I was taking notes and recognizing, oh, wait a minute, there's reading that we did almost 4 years ago with cohort 11. I've forgotten all this information about pausing, holding space, creating opportunities, recognizing what are some weaknesses, what are some strengths, things of that nature that are inspiring me even more. And I know that I'm gonna go back to my campus and start to think about, well, what am I doing? Because again, for me, Title IX, ADA, and diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging is a continuous cycle where people are expecting you to quickly get a response. Tell me what I'm asking, there's a concern on campus and I need a response from you. And it's again, using my ICP experience and pausing, taking a moment to really understand what is it does my institution need, and is my institution ready? And most importantly, if my institution's not ready, one of the things that I have also discovered is paying close attention to, if we're not ready, why aren't we ready? What do we need? And how do I get it? And that doesn't come just with me alone. I may be asking the questions, but I also recognize, again, back to the colleagues, the connections that you made, that many of you, we're all in our campuses facing very similar challenges. We have, many institutions have, through challenges, created these amazing opportunities. And it's just a matter of how do we connect with one another to share information, because my mission, the mission of my institution, the mission of each of our institutions, there is a connection because we're all under the AJCU. And there's a greater mission that we all share, is for, with and for our institution, for our students, for our institutional communities. So again, it's paying close attention, pausing, going back, asking the question of, through this 18 months, what have I filled in my glass? How am I raising my glass to half full versus empty? And then if I'm feeling overwhelmed, then how am I slowly sipping or asking others to share with me so that the glass does not overflow and I feel overwhelmed? So, with all of that, one of the things that I recognize is that nothing is perfect, and I don't look for perfection. I think that coming into the ICP or to a leadership role is that expectation that we're supposed to be perfect, and we're not. I know that through discernment is to look at the experience, to examine the experience, that the self-reflection of my own awareness, self-awareness, and the awareness of others, and discern on what has the daily experience look like for each of us, for our institution. And oftentimes when you look at that, it's not about looking for the perfection, but it's, again, being humble and looking for openness and the experience of itself, the experience as a whole. And with that, then you start to ask yourself again, who are my colleagues and who are the support mechanisms that I have in place? I know by doing that, one of the successes, and I want to share with you from my experience, one of the successes that I've had is that along with the Capstone at Boston College, one of the things that I discovered is that it's called the height, and I know this, Lemoyne is also called the height, and I recognize that it's the height because it's the hill. But one of the things that came out of this, and recognizing that, again, what's the knowledge that I have, what's the knowledge I don't have, is to really think about, in terms of disability as an ability, where does that fall in our mission? And we recognize that we talk about connecting with and creating welcoming inclusive spaces. But when it came to ableism, there was a whole, a greater whole. So again, sharing that space and that reflection as to how do I feel that knowledge, and then who do I invite to the table? So since that time, one of the great things that has come out of that is we created an opportunity where one of the faculty members came and shared concerns with me, and with that we talked about him developing, my office supporting him to develop a affinity group or an ERG for it's called Abled at BC, and it really talks about ableism versus a disability, and sharing knowledge to really move the institution forward, connecting it back to mission. The other thing that came out of the experience, and again, in opening the space of building my knowledge and not making sure that the cup doesn't overflow, is to opening space to talk about courageous conversations about race, racism, systemic racism on our campus. This is it's a challenging conversation to have, where you have differences of opinion, and to bring that forward was to invite, not to call out, but to invite many people to the table. One of the things that was very supportive is during that time, Eyes to See came out, was developed with the AJCU, and as I mentioned about making sure that you are paying attention, is recognizing, was my campus ready to bring forward Eyes to See, for us to go through the Eyes to See examen? And I took a chance, because at that time, who has now since and is the president of Holy Cross, Vince Rizzo. I brought it to Vince's attention, and he was one of the first people who supported ICE, and he's an ICP graduate, and he supported through the Forum for Racial Justice in America of bringing ICE to C, bringing it to our president, and bringing ICE to C to our institution. And now we are in our 7th ICE to C examine at our institution, and it has been an amazing journey where it really opened up knowledge. And for me, I'd say again, how do I strive to, as a leader, to implement what I've learned in ICP to my leadership style? Is it takes a village. It's not just me, but it's my institution. It's my cohort 11. We stay in touch. All of you hopefully will stay in touch. And it's all of you, because as I said, just in this short time, I'm hearing conversations, I'm watching the connections that you're making, I'm hearing already conversations you're having about what's happening on your institution. And I asked a couple of people the questions, well, when did you last get together? And someone said, I think it was August or last summer, something like that. So it's been a while, but you came back together like a community. And so to how do you strive with ICP and the lessons you learn is to recognize that there are multiple stages you'll go through depending on the topic, where your glass may look very different, but you also recognize that in filling the glass and replenishing is all about one another. And again, by doing that, your mission, the mission of advancing the mission, continues to move forward. So, thank you. Questions? Yes.
I'm curious how you organize ICE to C.
Oh, so great question. So with Eyes to See, when we first brought it to our campus, it was at the heart of COVID. So you had COVID happening, and for all of you who remember, Black Lives Matter, racial unrest happening in the nation and also coming onto our campuses. So when we first brought Eyes to See on our campus, it was through I first started with our leadership. So I invited all of our leaders at Boston College to partake in the Eyes to See racial examine. And we did it virtually because at that time we weren't able to come together. And I broke it up into 3 parts because as leaders I knew that I couldn't do it for a full day. And I also, with Eyes to See, I wanted to do it in 3 parts so our leaders could take enough information and then build on it. And then so the way that I constructed it is we did the first part in the spring, and that was during the Easter season, so during the lentil season. And then I did part 2. It was all done like 3 weeks later. We did a part 2, and then right before the close of Easter, before we went on Easter break, we wrapped up part 3. And so they had the whole exam in 3 parts, but I gave them a little bit of a break so they could take it, reflect, discern on it, and then come back. And then the second time we did it, once I got leadership's buy-in, and then the next thing I did is that then I did an open invitation to our campus community, and we limited to about 25, 30 people, and it was a room similar to this, and then we did the examine together. And since that, and I've usually done it we just recently completed one through the Advent was the one what just finished, and we're gonna start the next one during the lentil season. So either we start in during Thanksgiving, Advent, or the lentil season, so we connected. And we have we've done it with open session, We also have done it with departments who wanna go through it as a department. And I always, and before I go, if it's a department that asks, I always ask them, how will you support the participants in your area after the exam is, this space that's examined, because it's not a one and a done, it's a continuous journey. And so they need to share with me, and there's also members of our community who can help them to continue to have dialogue, to unpack some of the emotions, the experience that people will have going through the exam. So far so good. We've had one or two people who have, they weren't ready for it yet, but we're working and helping them to come to that journey, because everyone is at a different place in their journey. But as a department, you make sure that they continue as a leadership has to continue to support. And then as an open campus, again, they're going into different spaces on campus, and again, opportunities to continue the conversation, the dialogue. Good questions. Did I make anyone thirsty? Thirsty for more knowledge. Yes. All right, thank you so much.